I just can't get past Brighton at the moment. I'm really struggling to get past Brighton. And I've been to some of these places, well, most of the places in Brighton, but I never viewed it the way I'm viewing it right now. What we're looking at is the Aquarium, okay? And one of the piers is right here. It's called the Marine. We'll talk about this as the video goes on. It was called the Marine Pier, but it's now called the Palace Pier. It's where all the rides in. So there's one here. And then there was another pier, the West Pier, which I talked about the other day, which has been destroyed. And there was actually another pier up here earlier on. Quite an amazing pier. No, I've never seen anything like it in my life. And of course, that's got destroyed by a storm, didn't it? But we'll talk about that later on. But this is the Aquarium. But I mean, just look at the building. Look at the building. I mean, look at the people. These pictures to make us believe that this was happening, but I just don't see it. I mean, look at what these people look like, and look at the scenery. Look at what they're living in. Anyway, there's a little bit of history about the Aquarium. 1872, and it's the oldest aquarium in the world. That one in Brighton. We've got things like this. We're building this. We've got piers that are there. You can't travel on the land, but there's a pier with 12 inches of granite, which I'm going to explain later on. And of course, we did yesterday the Daddy Longlegs, which looks like War of the Worlds. And I mean, to me, it's sort of like, it probably doesn't really look like it in a way, but it just reminds me of the Roman baths. Anyway, I didn't realise that the first body shop was opened there in 1976. ABBA won the Eurovision Song Contest there. And the other thing that they have there is this electric train, which is old. It's an old train. But we've got things like this. This beautiful, beautiful, beautiful buildings. Look at it. Just look at it. Look at it at night. It's beautiful. Built in the 1800s. Anyway, I went there when there was dolphins. It looked like that. Look at it. Look at that. In and build all that. Our history, it's a lie, all of it. It's just ridiculous. We're having problems hauling some coal off the boats, but we can build all this. But we've got no roads. It's a lie. Whatever happened, I don't know what happened, but they're lying. Anyway, it has this tunnel you can walk through. Anyway, there's a bit more about the history. And it actually began in 1869. And there's a bit more. You can slow it down and look at it if you want to yourself. And then they reconstructed a lot of it in 1927. So that's incredible, isn't it? Like, we're just going... We don't really have any money. The people are really poor, yet we're able to do all these kind of things. Just amazing. Look at those ceilings. There we go, opened in 1872. And we've got things like this. Houses like that. But we can't travel on the roads. There are no roads. But we've got houses like that. We've got a dome like this. Look at that theatre. They hold weddings in there. I went to a Greek wedding in there years ago. You have functions there. You can hire the pavilion. Look at it. Just look at it. We can have all that. But there are no roads, no trains. Oh, except here, which seems to be, you know, one of the first inventions of a little working train. And there's about the West Pier, first pier, and was built in 18. Well, and then there's the other pier. That one. Well, let's go back because I've missed that. So, it was built in 1863. It took 3 years to build the West Pier, 1863. And then in 1899, that one's open. And in fact, it was built before, but they had problems and whatever they were doing to it, and it took quite a few years to build this one. And it looks like that. That's the West Pier as it starts to... And that was storm damage on it in the 1900s, which they supposedly mended. And there's a bit of information about the West Pier. There's a bit more. And there you go, look. At the end of the pier, boats used to moor. Look at it. That's still an old picture. Look at the dress of these people. But look at this beautiful pier. I think that's a little bit further on. 1920s. But look at it. It's beautiful. That is another pier which is destroyed. That's Eastbourne's Pier. Look, another fire. Always like to destroy these beautiful things, don't they? I didn't find many pictures with both the piers in, so of course this is the pier that's been destroyed and this is the pier that's left, and the other pier was up here. The other pier I'm going to talk about in a minute was up here. So that's the one with all the rides on it now, and this is the one that was lost. But this one was magnificent compared to this one. This one was longer than that one. Anyway, look at that. That's the pier that's gone. Look at it. Beautiful. Yep, there you go. There's another picture of this. This is the one that's gone. This is the one that's there with all the rides, and the other one I'm going to talk about is further up. So, there's a bit more information. That's the West Pier, telling how long it is. And then that's the other pier. So you can see it's quite a lot long. It's quite a bit bigger. And that's about that. It is really amazing that you just don't know things. That you're, you know, even at school not even told the history really of where you live. I mean, as part of your working, so you understand the place that you live in. I wasn't born in Brighton. My mother wasn't born in Brighton. My father wasn't born in Brighton, but my father lived a few miles away, Woodingdean, in a, well, I suppose it's a town in the hills, a few miles away from Brighton. And my mum lived in Hove, and Hove adjoined. Her family turned up there. Actually, my mum might have been born in Hove, to be honest. It was her parents that were born in Wales. And then my dad's family moved from London, from Homerton. But anyway, I grew up around Brighton. I went to the King Alfred swimming pool, which everybody knows is a seawater swimming pool there. I stood many a time going, I'm half in Hove and I'm half in Brighton, because there's a line. I went and saw many bands there. I went to the cinema there. I did loads of things. Went to the beach there. Went to the dolphins. Did things at weekends there, you know, on the beach. Just grew up there. A lot of my childhood was spent there because my grandparents lived in Hove and so forth, and family still lived around there. But you know, you never look into the place that you live in. I just didn't look into it like I'm looking into it now. Anyway, I just wanted to mention this place. This is called the Madeira Terrace. It's nearly a mile long, just like that. Just like you see it there along the road. just masses of it, just a whole line. You can park, well, I'm not sure now because I haven't been there for a while, but you can park along the road there and so forth. And it does start to get out of Brighton and starts becoming just the big houses. But I mean, they made this. It's really old. It's the same age as the pavilion. You know, these things are added in the 1800s. Look at it. Look what they made. Where did they get this from? I'm going to explain a bit more as this video goes on. These structures as well, but just, you know, nearly a mile of this. You can see it going on and on and on. I want to talk about this place here. I've never even heard of this place before. I've never heard of it. It's called the Royal Suspension Chain Pier at Brighton. So Brighton had 3 piers. So basically this one was here and the other 2 are further up the coast, a bit further up the coast. Not much obviously because it's Brighton, but it's a little bit further up, but this one was here. I'm going to explain a bit more about this one. I'm so amazed. Because they could do photography so early on in the 1800s, there are some pictures of it. They're a bit obviously dull, but there are pictures of it. I think that's one there, see? Anyway, some of them are paintings, but they definitely draw this thing, and it looks like that. Amazing. This, by this person, is, they reckoned it looked more like this. And it actually was a port. What's left now in the sea at low tide is the stumps. They're petrified, but the stumps lasted in the ground. You imagine how long ago this was built, but the stumps still remain. Anyway, supposedly it was destroyed in a storm. Well, I'm going to tell you how this thing was built. The writing's probably a bit small that you can't see it, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you a bit of it because I just find it absolutely fascinating. It might not be fascinating to everybody, but it was to me. It says, the Chain Pier. Historically, Brighton was a port, and I'm not talking about the marina that was built in the 1970s because Brighton does have a marina now. In the days when sea transport was more efficient than road, it made sense to land cargo on the beach rather than to try and haul it through the South Downs and from further afield, but it was still back-breaking work to take cargo, including coal, off ships and onto rowing boats to take them ashore. For custom purposes, the Port of Brighton, with 600 high length of seafront roughly between East Street and West Street. In the days before the train, Brighton was also the shortest route. I can't believe this just amazed me. Brighton was the shortest route between London and Paris, shorter than the time from Dover. So when the Chain Pier was opened in 1823, its primary function was at a landing stage for sailing ships between Brighton and Dieppe. But from the start, it also functioned as a popular promenade with a few attractions. It had a camera obscura. Oh my goodness, do you see what I mean? Like, wow. The Chain Pier was 1,554 feet long and cost about £30,000 to build. It was a kind of one-ended suspension bridge. They managed to build that in 1823, a suspension bridge, but without only half of it. So they must have known what they were doing. Its formal name was the Royal Suspension Chain Pier. It consisted of 4 cast iron towers spaced 260 feet apart, standing on wooden piles. The shape of the towers was inspired by the Egyptian pylon, which also was the inspiration for the doorway of the Pentecostal church in the Lanes, Brighton Lanes, if anybody's heard of that. Now the front and Franklin pub. Have a closer look next time you're passing. The chains suspended from the towers supported the weight of the pier's deck, and on the shore the chains were buried 54 feet into the face of the East Cliff, or King's Cliff, attached to a 3-ton steel plate which was set in concrete. Did you hear that? 54 feet into the East face cliff, attached to 3-ton steel plates which were set in concrete. But didn't they say up there, its primary function, where are we? But it was still breaking work to take cargo, including coal, off the ships and rowing boats ashore, but they managed to get 3 tons of steel and concrete and stuff there, and they were using concrete. So, and this bit about it then explains a bit more about going to France, and I'm like, wow, no one's mentioned that to me before. The chain pier was designed and built by Captain Samuel Brown, a Royal Navy engineer who lived in the Marine Parade. In 1817, Brown had painted the bar chain for use in the construction of suspension bridges. The bar chain system made the chain out of straight wrought iron bars between 5 and 15 foot long. So they had all this problem with hauling some coal in, but here they've got these iron bars between 5 and 15 feet with eyes cast or drilled out at each end. The eyes were then coupled using bolts. The chain pier was started in 1822 and opened in 1823, so it only took them a year to build it. The suspension towers were made of cast iron. They had 3 main sections, 2 vertical and 1 horizontal. The sections were made of cast iron plates which were riveted and cemented together using iron cement. The vertical sections were 25 feet tall, stood 10 feet apart, and each weighed 15 tons. The towers were supported on oak piles, about 20 of them, which were driven about 10 feet into the seabed. They stood about 13 feet above the watermark. The pier had formed a T-section with the main body of the pier. The pier head was 80 foot by 40 foot in an area and was supported by 150 vertical oak piles, so part of it was made in oak. Had platform which was paved with, wait for it, Purbeck granite, about 12 inches thick, weighing in total 200 tons. 200 tons of marble at the end of it. And yet they were struggling to bring the coal up the beaches. Here's a little bit more on, and there's that person's email, if anybody wants to email them. The chain pier was in the foreground, was destroyed by a storm in 1896, and the Palace Pier started in 1891, was recognisable pier by even the building progress had been slow. It wasn't opened in the public till 1889, so that one took a lot longer to build. That one, the chain pier took a year, but that one took a lot longer. On the distant West Pier, one can make out the pavilion and the seaward end. This was added at 1883, so this photograph must have been taken 1883 to 1886 because they're saying there was a bit more added to this pier. And of course, there's one of the piers. There is the West Pier, the one that's gone, and then this is the Palace Pier, but it was called the Marine Pier to start with and then turned into the Palace Pier, and this is the one that's got all the rides on it now. I still find it quite amazing that the shape of the towers was inspired by the Egyptian pylon, which was also, I just find that really incredible. That, and then, wow, and then down here, I think, because I'm not sure if I cut this bit off, obviously steam started and that took over for the ferry crossings. Here's a little bit more about Brighton, in the fact that it was called the Marine Pier. So in 1888, Brighton Marine Pier Company was formed to construct a new pier about 200 metres to the west of the standing chain pier, built in 1822 to 23. So yeah, that's the other pier, but it's now called the Palace Pier. Quite amazing though, hey? When you know that this is nearly a mile long, this beautiful place is there. The oldest aquarium in the world. We're having difficulty bringing our provisions from the sea to land because there's no roads, there's no trains except the little one at Brighton. Those kind of things are done, but only for maybe a mile or two, and yet we're making things like this, the daddy long legs. I mean, we're building, look at the structure, look what it would take to bring things in. You'd need cranes. This was a port. There's just something that really doesn't add up. I'm not saying that the ferries didn't go to, it was quicker to get to Paris from Brighton than it was from Calais. So obviously boats and things sailed from here, but like it couldn't have been a particularly big port, because you saw the size of the pier, and that kept getting destroyed until it was destroyed in storms till it couldn't be mended, and then they decided to build the other two. And now they've built a marina, but that took a long time for the marina to come in. We're talking about 1970s or something. But like, it's a port, they're sailing from it, yet they've got this most beautiful, beautiful pier with 12 inches of marble on it. The whole thing weighing tons. We're making things like this, which, if you understand, no one else has got trains in the sea like this. And they were managed to pour concrete, do the tracks, the biggest tracks in the world, and have this going in the 1800s. I think we moved into all this, but something must have happened because there was no roads. We're making beautiful structures like this, which have been destroyed now. But just look at the buildings behind. We're having problems getting coal off ships to bring to these houses. Look at the houses, look at the structures. I mean, look over here. And before we get those two, we're building a structure like this, which is actually modelled off some Egyptian era. It's actually a suspension bridge, and they're digging out 50 feet of hill to put it in. I mean, we'd have a mega great problem doing it today. So how could they do all this then? Our history is such a lie. This bridge was a suspension bridge as well. Like, the planning, everything. Look at the time. There's just something so wrong